Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another YouTube video on the Transfer Portal CFB presented by NoContextCFB. I'm your host, Dylan Ruben King. I am joined by Andrew, one of my co-founders with the Transfer Portal. Andrew, how are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic. As we can see, we've got a rising star in the coaching game with us right now, Coach Jason Eck. Coach Jason Eck, man, how you doing?
Doing great, Andrew and Dylan. Honored to be on with you guys here, man, and talk a little football with you guys.
100%. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on being the first head coach interview at the Transfer Portal CFB. How's that sound?
I'm honored. Hopefully, by being on the transfer portal, I'm getting good karma, so our best players don't end up in the transfer portal that way. But I'm a fan of your guys' work there on Twitter, and like to follow along. And again, I appreciate your support of all college football, and especially FCS.
Means a lot to us. Thank you so much for the support. Congratulations on a great year in your first season as a head coach at Idaho. You said when you took this job that the Idaho Vandals are a sleeping giant in FCS football. What made you believe that, and how close do you think this program is to taking the word sleeping out of that title?
Well, the reason I thought there's a lot of, consistency or a lot of similarities between some of the other programs that have been powerhouses, the last 10, 20 years of FCS football. You look at the Dakota schools that both played in the championship game, or the Montana schools that have done very well historically in FCS. Just a lot of commonalities between the state of Idaho and Montana and the Dakotas. We're contiguous as you go across that northern part of the country. And the two things that really stand out to me, part of the reason I think there is so many good programs at the lower levels of college football up there is a little bit weather-based. I think you're just not as developed of an athlete as a senior in high school when you're in places where there's, a lot of days below freezing, and you're just not spending as much time outside as you are compared to a young man in Florida or Texas or California. I don't think that means your ceiling of what you can develop into is any different. You're probably not as far along your developmental quest. I also think it's a big advantage to be in a state that does not have a Power 5 program, and that's big with your alumni support, donations, things like that. A lot of the influential people in the state of Idaho, for instance, the governor, Brad Little, he's an Idaho alum. So you have a lot of people doing really well in the state, and I think that's the same in Montana and the Dakotas. And then probably the third thing is just the population. We have Idaho is the biggest of those states. Idaho is bigger than either the Dakotas or Montana, and Idaho continues to grow. It's one of the fastest growing states in the U.S. So that's as more population comes in, there's more recruitable athletes. And, I just think they really found a good home for us in the Big Sky Conference, which I love. And I love FCS football. And, again, I think it is time to wake up the sleeping giant. I think we started this year getting in the playoffs, but I don't think we're done. I think we can keep continuing to grow and get better here over time, Dylan.
So you took a team that was 6-11 the previous two seasons, and then you took them to a 7-5 record your very first season. You made the SCS playoffs. What was the first culture change that you needed to instill into the program when you landed in Moscow?
Well, I hired a great staff, and, a lot of, my basis of hiring our staff, you wanted great teachers, you wanted, guys who knew football, but, you really wanted guys who had good energy, guys who were positive, guys who you really liked to be around. Because I thought if I would really like to be around those guys, Andrew, our players would too. So it was really, changing to making sure that our players were having a great time being part of the Vandal program football, or the Vandal football program. They were excited to come to practice. They were excited to be around our coaches. And I think in this era of the transfer portal where your players, can leave and be eligible immediately anywhere, I think it's critical. They're having a great experience. And I think we focused a lot on that, being positive, having good energy around our practices, our workouts, and our coaches building great relationships with the players, and our players building great relationships with the other players to help, really enjoy the environment we're in.
You spoke on it a little bit there, but this was your first year ever being a head coach at the college level, which meant you were tasked with building a staff for the first time. One coach that I've spoken with said that he had a running list throughout his career that he always carried with him of coaches that he'd call if he ever got the head coach job. Did you have a list like that? And how challenging was it to build a staff for the first time?
Well, I think you often think throughout your career, this would be a great guy to work with. I'd love to work with him, or maybe someone you worked with at one point, you'd love to work with them again. What's crazy though, as time goes on, you might have a guy who you thought would be great to have on your staff, and now by the time you become a head coach, he's coaching the SEC. So we're probably not going to get him at the FCS level. So I do think it was part of that. And I think one of the biggest hires for me was getting Luke Schleisner to come over, our offensive coordinator. He came with me from South Dakota State. And I think that allowed me to really focus, have him, who were on the same page offensively, handle the offense and let me be a good head coach to the whole team and not just focus too much on the offense. So that was a start. And then, some of the coaches I competed against, Rob Arich, Tyler Yelk, those were guys who I competed against in the Missouri Valley Conference, and I thought did a great job of coaches. And then, some of them were fits reasonably with recruiting. Thomas Ford, who's very connected in the state of Washington. David Losey, who knows the Palouse very well. I wanted to have a Polynesian presence on our staff, being on the West Coast. So it was kind of a big puzzle trying to slot everything together and build the staff. But, it was funny that not everybody on my staff that I, have in mind for a long time would be on my staff. It's just as you try to build that thing together, you put it there. And it certainly is a challenge because that's something you don't do as an assistant coach.
So it feels like you've kind of been everywhere, like in the Midwest, the Rocky Mountains area. First you start off as a grad assistant at Wisconsin and Colorado. You previously were at Idaho as an offensive line coach and as a tight ends coach. Then you go to Winona State, where if you ask people to ask where that is on the map, they're not going to know. Minnesota, for those that really don't know. Ball State, Hampton, Western Illinois, Minnesota State, obviously South Dakota State for a good amount of years. What was it like to travel through the country in these different areas? These aren't big cities, very kind of rural-ish areas. And what lessons did you take coaching through all these through these schools?
Andrew, after my 5 years, I was a grad assistant. I learned a lot being on Coach Alvarez's staff and then Coach Barnett's staff at Colorado. When I started to be a full-time coach then, which was at 2004 in Idaho, the first 12 years I was a full-time coach. So this is, 2004 to 2015, those 12 seasons. After 6 of those seasons, the head coach that I worked for that year did not come back the next year. So, and there was a lot of different reasons. It wasn't, some of the guys were let go, but, other ones it was, Nick Holt went back to go be the D coordinator at SC, or Dennis Erickson, who I worked for at Idaho, went to Arizona State and got the head job. We had even crazy ones. Aaron Keene, who hired me at Minnesota State Mankato, he lost his job. He was the interim coach, and then the previous head coach had been gone for 2 seasons, got his job back by a union injunction. So a lot of just crazy things. So at the time, it wasn't great to go through because that kind of led me to moving around a little bit because there were some times where I had to go. I worked for Rob Ash his last year at Montana State. That was my previous Big Sky experience. And then, Jeff Choate came in and had his own line coach. So at the time it was kind of a negative, but just like I talked to our players, when you have adversity, when you overcome it, it makes you stronger. I think I learned a lot for it. And now, when I became a head coach, I had worked for 12 different head coaches in my assistant coach career. So that gave me really a big pool of knowledge to go back on that I learned from these coaches. And I think I took a little something from all 12 of those guys. Probably, the 2 most influential, I would say, was Coach Alvarez, because I played for him and was a GA. So I was around him for 7 years as a head coach. And, a lot of my foundations of what I know about college football, come from him. And then Coach Stiglmeyer, who just recently retired from South Dakota State. I was with him for 6 years at the end of my career. And, just seeing how he built that program into a winner there, and, how he managed things, and, how he created a culture, same thing where guys aren't going in the transfer portal, even though they, couldn't go be Power 5 players. Guys like Tucker Kraft last year, he's created a great environment there where guys want to stay and want to be a part of it. So I've learned a lot from those different places. And I think it definitely was an advantage for me that I'd been at Idaho before and I knew the lay of the land here and I knew I would like it here. I knew I enjoyed it. That helped me really have that strong belief that we could win here. I really thought it was inevitable that we would win at Idaho. I probably was great to get a little faster, a little ahead of schedule, making the playoffs in our first year. But I thought that was something that was going to come. And now, the challenge is we got to keep, pressing to be a team that, made the tournament, to really trying to be one of those contenders that can, go far and compete for a championship.
Adding on to that, your career timeline, as Andrew said, and as you put it, it embodies the values of patience and that good things will eventually come to those that work hard and, stick with it. But can you tell us about maybe a time earlier in your career when you were bouncing around so much where maybe you felt discouraged? Did it take a toll on you moving around and having so much coaching turnover around you?
Yeah, it definitely did. We were, I ended up, I had a rough stint from, I think 10, 11, 12, 13, I had 4 different jobs in 4 years. And in 2010, I was at Ball State. I worked for the late Stan Parrish, who just recently passed away a couple of years ago. And, he took over for Brady Hoke when Brady Hoke went to San Diego State for the first time. Tough act to follow. Brady had been the winningest coach, ever at Ball State. And then, Stan got let go a couple of years later. We didn't do too well, and he got let go. And then I ended up at Hampton University in Virginia. So that was the furthest east I'd ever been. And I was only there for a year, was a little further away from family. Our family's more in the Midwest. And then I went to Western Illinois, trying to get back closer to the Midwest and get to a little better conference with the Missouri Valley. And then I worked for Mark Hendrickson, who had a few years in his contract, and he ends up getting let go. So, that was a time where I really thought, hey, is this something I want to, keep doing to my family, to keep uprooting my kids? I have a big family. At that time, I had 3 kids. Now I have 5 kids. But I was like, hey, is this something I really want to do? I kind of explored some other options and looked at some other things, but I'm very thankful I stuck with it. Really, that off season, I was fortunate. We had pretty good contracts. So even though I got let go, I was paid till June 30th. So that was a year where I was really selective. I turned down a few jobs that year just because I didn't think they were good long-term fits in my family, and really found a good situation at Minnesota State Mankato. And I was very thankful to Aaron Keene for hiring me there. And he was the first coach to promote me to be a coordinator, and that gave me my first opportunity. And then Todd Hoffner came in as the head coach and kept me as the coordinator. And we had a great season in 2014, went to the national championship game in Division II. So, that when leaving Western Illinois, that was a tough time in my career, and, definitely gave me some doubts. Hey, is this the best thing for me? Or are there other avenues to look at that are better for me and my family? But I love coaching. I love, being around our players and helping, develop them. And, very thankful I stuck with it. And I think that is a good message to young guys in coaching. It is you got to grind it out. It's not always going to be easy. You're in a sport where half the teams lose every Saturday. So, there's going to have some adversity in your career that you got to overcome. And again, I think that's a good lesson, because that's the same for our players who are trying to prepare for life.
So kind of go back a little bit about like these different places that you've coached at. Obviously, the casual college football fan, they know all about the FBS. FBS is on every hour of the day on a Saturday. When it comes to FCS, there will be a couple on TV, but you may have to subscribe to a premium service to view it. Now, once you go down to Division II and Division III, the average fan knows almost nothing about it just because it doesn't get the exposure as the FBS and FCS does. So for someone that's coached in Division II, what was the biggest difference that you experienced going from Division II to FCS?
Well, I'll tell you my first example. When I was at Idaho the first time, we were FBS. We were in the Sun Belt Conference for a year and the WAC Conference for 2 years. So my first year at Winona State, spring of 2007, it's our first spring practice, and our players are stretching. I'm talking to my players during stretch, and I look over at our little area where we do our offensive line drills. And I kind of look and I say, I wonder where our hand shields are that our players hit. And I wonder, where are our little boards that we go over, and where's our chute? And, I was kind of spoiled from being at the FBS level that you usually have like equipment managers and all these guys who, have everything set up for you. And then I realized, you know what, I'm responsible. It's my job in Division II to go get all that stuff ready. So I ran over to the shed and got it all set up for practice. And I think it was a good experience to coach at that D2 level because, the players are very appreciative. They might get like one T-shirt and one pair of shorts for the whole year. Where, in the FBS, you get a ton of gear, but they don't know any better. That's what they know, and they love it. And, their scholarships are smaller. So, they probably could make more money working at McDonald's over the course of the year than they did for that. But, again, they love football and they love being a part of it. There's no one who's, just there because they're on a full ride. They're there because they really love football. So, to me, that was a rewarding experience to go through because that made me really feel like, you know what? Yeah, I'm coach. This is why I want to coach because I love the kids. I love the players. I love the competition regardless of the level. So there's something pure about that. And there's still some good players that come out of Division II. I coached Chris Reed, who was an offensive lineman at Minnesota State Mankato. He just finished his 8th year in the NFL playing for the Vikings. He's kind of bounced around. But, there are really good players who love football at that level, but you're off the grid. You're right. I mean, that ticker that gives all the scores on the bottom of ESPN, they don't give you any D2 scores until you get to like the semifinals of the national championship game, where obviously at the FBS is at the forefront, and FCS is getting better coverage now. When I was at South Dakota State, we had College Game Day come one year when we played North Dakota State, so it's getting a little better coverage. But there's a lot of good coaches still at that level. I have a lot of guys on my staff who've been at the Division II or Division III level. And I like that because I think those are guys who are in coaching for the right reasons. And they're not afraid. Sometimes I don't think it's by nature that guys are lazy or anything, but, sometimes those staffs at those Power 5 schools are so large that, guys have very segmented roles. They just do one little bit of thing where I like kind of guys who are all hands on deck and will find a way to help however they can and pitch in. And that's kind of the culture we want in our coaching staff.
Absolutely. And what a level of competition to kick off your first season at Idaho. You get Washington State and Indiana on the road, 2 Power 5 opponents. And your team held its own more than I think most people would have assumed that they would. What did you learn from those 2 games to kick off your career, and how did they set the tone for what was to come later in the year?
Well, I think one of your jobs as a head coach is to help build the confidence of your team and build belief in your players that they think they can compete and do things. So, those first 2 games where we, lost to Washington State by 7, and then we were up 10-0 at halftime against Indiana. They ended up coming to beat us by 13. Even though we lost those games, I think we built the sense that, hey, we are getting better. We're improving. The year before they had lost both of their Power 5 games by over 40 points each. So I think we built some confidence in that game that knowing we could compete. And, there was definitely some increased buy-in from the guys saying, you know what, if we, listen to this coaching staff and do what they're asking us to do, we're going to have success. And it was a positive. I think we made a positive. And again, I'm not saying it was like a moral victory or anything like that, but I think it was important in our first year that, we really focused on our process of getting better as a football program and didn't get too caught up in the results. And I think our players, after those first games, they certainly felt like we're getting better, we're improving.
Coaching's a hard job, and you have just displayed every example that you could have imagined, from getting your own equipment. And for a lot of fans, I mean, even us that just do the writing, it's not that we're very guilty of this too. We always yell at the TV. It's just a fan's nature. So I just got to ask you, from a coach's perspective, what is an aspect of coaching that fans do not understand? And maybe in some cases they will never understand because they never want to accept a certain truth of what a coach does.
Well, I think fans in general don't always understand the time that goes into coaching. My wife will even joke that, whether it's our neighbors or maybe even a relative, they'll ask about, if we're having a family dinner on a Sunday night during the season, they don't understand that, no, we work all day Sunday. We're breaking down the last game and fixing our errors and then getting ready for the next game. Or, same people ask, what do you do during the off season? Do you have the whole off season off? Where no, I'm sitting here in Southern Idaho and Boise right now, and I've recruited all day. And then, tonight I have an alumni function I'm going to go to down here to talk to boosters and alums. So there's a lot of behind the scenes work. And I tell you what, I even learned this year, being my first year, as a head coach, there's a lot of other things that you don't think about as an assistant, dealing with budgets and dealing with, operations things and, setting the whole schedule for, everything we do, whether it's the off season, spring ball, our meals, and things like that. So there certainly is a lot that goes into it. And, I do think the one thing is that the coaches are really, they definitely are working hard and investing. Yeah, I know sometimes, you call a play that doesn't work, but, it's certainly not, because of lack of preparation or, going by the seat of your pants. Usually we're spending a lot of time trying to get ourselves in the best situations. And, that's one thing that's unique about our industry. If you're, say you're like a stockbroker or something, everyone in the industry can celebrate together when the market's good and everyone can commiserate when the market's bad. We're 50-50 every week. Half the guys win, half the guys lose. So you can't everybody have success in the same wave. So it's certainly competitive that way.
You described the feeling, Coach, of seeing your team up on the board in the SCS playoff selection show on Sunday.
Unbelievable. I mean, all the years, we had been at the playoffs, whether it been at Division II or at South Dakota State, we kind of went into that selection show knowing we were in. I mean, there wasn't suspense, but we truly felt suspense. We thought we were on the bubble. Thought we deserved to be in with 7 Division I wins and a 6-2 record in the Big Sky Conference. But then, as I looked through the past years, I mean, I found there were some 6-2 teams in the Big Sky who didn't make it. So we felt fortunate to be in, though we thought we deserved to be in. And it was very surreal. I mean, I think going into it, I kind of thought maybe Sac State would be the 1 seed and Montana State would be the 3 seed. And then right away they put South Dakota State ahead of Sac State, and they put North Dakota State ahead of Montana State. And I started thinking, oh man, they must not think the Big Skies, is good. And then I thought, just because of regionalization, I thought maybe Weber State, North Dakota were 2 of our most likely opponents in the first round, just because they're the closest teams that I thought would play in the first round to us. And then I saw those 2 played each other. So I was like, man, maybe we're not going to get in. And then I felt a little better. I think we saw Montana's name pop up before ours, and I felt we had a better resume, beating them head to head, and they were 4-4 in the Big Sky, and we were 6-2. So I felt a little better. And then we're thrilled, even though it was a long road trip to go down to southeastern Louisiana. We were thrilled to have the opportunity to do so.
To build a little bit on that, I think you can also say you've got a really exciting 2023 season coming up. You're getting your second year. I feel like you and your group of guys are ready to take another step and build from that 7-5 record. And you've got really good slate of games. I mean, you go to Nevada, you go to Berkeley to play Cal. You obviously got to play, those big guys, Sac State, Montana State. It's Big Sky football. It's one of the best conferences in the FCS, arguably the best. What are you most excited for as we go into the 2023 season?
Well, I think just continuing on our journey of improvement. Very, very excited to get even to our walkthroughs in the coming weeks with our team, and then getting into spring practice to keep developing. I think we know now, having been through a year, who are the guys that we know we can count on, and who are kind of nucleus players. And with those guys, it's real fine tweaks to get them a little bit better. You're not going to have massive jumps if you're, Hayden Hatton and he had 16 touchdowns receiving last year. Really, we got to get him just a little bit better and then keep him healthy. And then we have some other guys who got to make big jumps, who really can make great developmental strides. And, we want to raise the bar. We saw what it took. I thought one thing I really pointed out to our team is just, when you look at the second round of the NCAA tournament this year, all 8 teams that had byes won. So that's really what you want to get to. If you want to be a contender in this tournament, you got to be one of those top 8 seeds to put yourself in a position. And to do that, we got to have a better record. We got to find a way to you'll probably win one of those FBS games. And then, you got to be 7-1 or 8-0, not 6-2 in your league to really have a shot at that. So, we're setting our goals higher. We're realizing that we're not going to sneak up on anybody this year. I think people last year might have been a little surprised or caught off guard where, I think our expectations are going to be much higher this year, and we got to embrace that and work hard to be ready to go. But I think we have a team that's very bought in and is already working really hard with their strength coach back in Moscow. And I'm excited to see how far this team can go.
Let's preview the 23 season a little bit further. Your team returns arguably more offensive firepower than anybody in the FCS. Led by Giovanni McCoy, the Jerry Rice Award winner, top freshman in the FCS. Hayden Hatton, you mentioned him, Jermaine Jackson, Anthony Woods at running back. Lots of guys coming back on defense as well. What do you think are the strengths of this team, and what's it going to be like for you as a coach to rely on that experience and so many guys coming back?
Well, it always starts with the quarterback. And, last year at this time, I had no idea who our quarterback was going to be. So I think it's a great relief to know we got Giovanni, and just seeing his growth from, early in the, really from the first spring where, he didn't have a great spring last year, but he just kept getting better. He's got great emotional stability, doesn't get too high, doesn't get too low, just keeps working and getting better. And, the improvements he made from, the Washington State game to the Southeastern Louisiana game were tremendous. And, he's going to continue to get better and stay humble and work on that. And then having, I don't know if I've ever been in my, 20 some years in coaching, been around, the opportunity to have two receivers coming back who were 1,000-yard receivers. So those are two great weapons. And, JJ, is so good in the return game as well, returning kicks and punts. And we want to keep featuring him on that. I think that's going to be his, best opportunity for pro footballer to have a shot in the NFL. And then Hayden's got that amazing catch radius. He's got the best hands I've seen since, playing against Cooper Kupp, back when he was at Eastern. So great group there. We got to keep getting better in the offensive line. I think Anthony Woods had a really nice year for a true freshman running back, and we hope he can develop into a 1,000-yard back. But we got to keep getting better up front, keep getting better at tight end. I think that those are areas for improvement. Then on defense, I think the two guys who really, are leaders there are Marcus Harris, who I think is a really outstanding corner for us. I think we got to keep developing the other side, and we're going to have some good competition for other starting corner spot because, that's the tricky part about corner is Marcus played really good last year. I kept noticing less and less balls thrown his way and more thrown the other side. And then Paul Mwala, who had a great year for us at will linebacker. We're going to move him to Mike linebacker this year to try to even get him in on the action more. But I'm expecting a really, really great season from him. He was a transfer from Notre Dame who was a second-team all-conference player there. And then, I think the growth is on the D-line. We have our leaders there at in the secondary and at the linebacker level now where we got to have that big growth to catch up to the, North Dakota State, South Dakota States of the world is getting better at that line of scrimmage, O-line, D-line, tight end.
So we were talking a little bit before we were recording, and I got to ask you, as a Wisconsinite, what's the better way to spend a Friday night? Brats on the grill or a Friday night fish fry?
That's a tough answer. You know what? I really enjoy a Friday night fish fry because you can't get those everywhere. I can get some Johnsonville brats out in Idaho and throw them on the grill out here, but if I'm back in Wisconsin on a Friday night, I'm going to go to that fish fry because you can't get that everywhere. A good supper club experience. That's a uniquely Midwest thing.
Haddock, perch, walleye. What's the fish of choice?
All of the above. I like all three. I don't mind. I like a little cod too. So I like all four of those. I'd be very pleased with.
Last time I went, we went to a supper club and they had like a sampler platter where they literally gave you like two pieces of everything. And I was like, that was one of the best Friday nights of my life.
Andrew, sign me up for that one. That one sounds like outstanding. Maybe a little clam chowder to start with too before,
yes.
A nice little bread basket. They got to have a good bread basket on a fish fry.
All right. So you mentioned it before. Obviously, you're a Wisconsin guy. You played at Wisconsin. You were a grad assistant under Barry Alvarez. You were a member of the 1998 Rose Bowl team. You were blocking for Ron Dane, who would go on to win the Heisman the next season. You talked about how much of an influence Barry Alvarez was to you. What was it like to be part of a Rose Bowl team like that, win the thing, and kind of like talk about like how Barry Alvarez was a coach to you as a player?
Now I'll be clear. Most of my blocking I did from Ron was in practice. Usually by the time I got in the game in the fourth quarter, Ron was already on the sidelines and I was blocking for Ron's backup. I was fortunate to play with a lot of guys at Wisconsin on the O-line who became pros. Aaron Gibson, Chris McIntosh, they were both first-round draft picks. Mark Tauscher played for about 10 years in the NFL. Casey Raybach, Al Johnson, a lot of guys who were pros. So I was kind of a career backup. But I did that. It was still a rewarding experience. So I came as a walk-on, ended up earning a scholarship when I was there. And I think I had in the back of my mind the whole time, that I wanted to be a coach. And so I soaked in as much as I could, whether it was from Coach Alvarez and how he talked to the team, how Coach Huber, who was the O-line coach I played for, how he prepared guys. And, I think one thing that Coach Alvarez really did a great job of is I think he, always exuded confidence. I think he helped, I really learned a lot about developing the confidence to your team and, just how to prepare them for what to expect so the team didn't panic. And I thought he always did a good job. One thing I've copied for him, I have a Thursday night travel squad meeting. So I just meet with our travel squad guys, kind of that core of 64 guys, and it's just me and them. And I kind of talk about our recipe to win the game that week and what we should expect in the game. And Coach Alvarez did that. And I thought it just always, you were prepared for what to expect. You were never surprised. And, I think he used to talk about the team not flinching. When things happen, you wouldn't flinch or you wouldn't, lose your composure. And I think our team did a great job of that this year of responding to adversity. And, when we played those, teams that were more talented than us, like, Washington State or Indiana, we did not back down and we wouldn't competed. So, and again, I think Coach Alvarez, he went to Wisconsin kind of with that same thought of seeing the vision that I had in Idaho of not seeing, Idaho football for what it was or what it had been the last few years, but, what it could be, what it could be. And he saw Wisconsin football for what it could be and what it could develop into. And again, we're just starting that process of trying to maximize the potential of Idaho football.
Absolutely. And we will let you get out of here soon, Coach. We thank you so much for your time, but I wanted to give you the opportunity to highlight anything that your program, your coaching staff is doing in the Moscow community that you wanted to highlight.
It's been a tough few months on our campus after, we had a great tragedy where 4 students who were very close to our, players and close to our campus community, Ethan and Maddie, Zana and Kaylee, were tragically murdered. And, we're very thankful, the town has really rallied around the campus and rallied around the victims. And thankfully they have a guy in custody who they think did it, which is hopefully going to give some a little bit more closure to the town. Obviously for those poor families, they're never going to be able to get their children back. But, I think our staff and our players have been, great examples of positivity around campus, and I've been very supportive of causes. Another thing that's really dear to us is we're part of the Andy Talley Foundation, which is trying to add people to the National Registry for marrow donors. And, last year we had the top Division I, drive of a new school that was their first time doing it. And our team got an award recently at the American Football Coaches Association convention we just had. And Coach Talley, the great Hall of Fame coach at Villanova, he's really put his heart and soul into that since he's retired from coaching. And that's a big service project that we do that is really close to our team. And I was very proud of our team, how we did it. I think we added 690 members to that registry through our drive on campus last year.
All right, Coach, I got one last question for you. Let's rewind it back. Oh, by the way, we are definitely going to advertise that foundation for you. We'll drop a link when we put this out. I think It's the least we could do.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Let's rewind it a little bit back to your playing days. I believe it was from like 95 to 98. Obviously, college football is way different now, but I love asking people this question. If you could have signed an NIL deal with any business during your playing days, who would it be and why?
It probably would have been with one of the watering holes in Madison, Wisconsin. Maybe the college club, the KK, or Wando's or State Street Brats. I think that I would have loved to have been a supporter there, and got some free food and some free spotted cows or something for my college budget back in the day. So there's a lot of good restaurants and bars, kind of down home places there in Madison. So that would have definitely been my top choice. I worked at some of those places as a bouncer during college, so I definitely would have wanted to get a little name, image, and likeness. One of those spots.
What about Mickey's Dairy Bar?
I'm a big fan of Mickey's too, as well. That was kind of a tradition. Was summer workouts Friday morning. The O-line always went at about 7 a.m. workouts, and then the whole O-line would go over to Mickey's afterwards, and that's a favorite. I've enjoyed taking my kids to Mickey's, and we've gone back to visit Wisconsin in the summer and things.
Absolutely love it. Well, Coach, thank you so much for joining us today, and congratulations again on a phenomenal season in 2022, and best of luck to you next season in 23.
Thanks, Dylan. Thanks, Andrew. Appreciate your support.